Welcome back to Not Alone with Melissa Sue Methvin, where we share stories of resilience, hope, and we inspire that there's always light across the darkness. Today's episode features a powerful woman that truly embodies resiliency and grace. Dr. Guitta Harb is born in a war-torn country in Beirut, Lebanon, where she lived in fear on a daily basis. Yet her faith, courage, and resilience brought her across the oceans, living a life of purpose. She truly embodies what it is to live with courage and with the heart and with purpose. It's such an honor to have her here today. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and join us in this inspiring conversation today. So welcome, Dr. Harb.
What a beautiful little introduction. Thank
Yes,
you. I'm so glad to be here, Melissa.
I am honored. And
Thank
I know, you are a dentist, you are an entrepreneur, you're the host of Smile Diaries, and now an author as well.
Yes.
So you're just such an inspiration. And I love seeing strong women like you that just are such a powerhouse. I love to see women rise and shine, but I know that comes sometimes where we kind of forget about ourselves. And I just want to start, first of all, with your story, where you're from, because it's an incredible story. Okay, first of all, when people look at you, you see that beautiful smile, beautiful heart, you're successful, your husband, 2 kids, but they have no clue.
Correct.
No idea where you came from and what it took to get to where you're at today. So I'd love to start where
100%. I think most people, when they look at you, they don't know what you've been through and they don't know your story and they think you've had it easy and success was just an overnight thing, as we were talking about last night. And for me, my story just started out with, being born into a war-torn country. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. And my entire childhood was just really spent in a lot of it in bomb shelters underneath our house and sleeping sometimes, 3-4 days and not seeing daylight, sleeping on cement floors, cold cement floors. And the government would shut off the electricity. So we wouldn't have electricity. So we'd have to either have a candlelight or lanterns. And, living in fear. It was constant fear where you're always in fight or flight mode and not knowing if you're going to survive.
And what's your earliest memory? Is that you remember all that?
The earliest memory, I was probably, I want to say 4 years old, maybe 3 or 4 years old. And I remember the whistling and the noise of the bombs kind of coming towards our house and our neighborhood. And just the running and the screaming and just getting ready to just run downstairs. And sometimes you have a second, sometimes you don't have even a millisecond to run. And so this constant fear of, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my parents, I'm going to lose my family, I'm going to lose my limbs, I'm going to lose my life. And so that was pretty much my childhood, although there was a lot of good days in Lebanon. And I always say it's a beautiful country and a beautiful place.
I've heard it's a very beautiful country.
Yeah, it's all out in the Mediterranean. And we grew up on the beach and beautiful mountains and we had all that. But there was so many moments throughout my childhood and teenage years. And it was 14 years I think I survived probably about 5 wars because almost every year it was this person fighting that person or this militia fighting that militia or this country, bombing us. And so it was constant just fear and constant dodging bombs. And sometimes we'd be at school and they would start bombing. And so the school would call our parents and come get your kids. And so they would come and drive under bombs and try to get us home under bombs. And you'd never know where that bomb is going to fall in front of you, behind you on your car.
Wow. So you're constantly on edge, right? Could you even sleep?
There was, to describe it, I can just tell you, most kids in this country go to bed with PJs on and they're being read a book and they have a teddy bear and maybe a warm blanket.
Oh yeah, the bedtime is like a whole process.
Bedtime is a whole process. For me, going to bed was making sure I had my flashlight in my hand because if a bomb hit, there was no electricity. So I had to literally have a flashlight to know where I'm going. I slept with slippers and always making sure that if I had to jump out of bed at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, that I had my slippers on so I'm not barefoot. Instead of holding a teddy bear, I held on to the key the keys to the shelter, and I was called the key holder. Wow. And
you were the youngest of 8.
I was the youngest.
Right?
I was the youngest of 8.
Wow.
And I was so afraid of dying as a child. And I had so much fear of dying that, to me, the only way I can control my death or, where my life is going was to hold on to the keys to the shelter.
Wow.
And I would literally run. I was always the first person to run downstairs and open the shelter and bring everybody down and make sure there's light in there. And I would grab, the younger kids, sometimes our neighbors had babies, and I would grab the babies and get them down there.
Oh, wow.
And so I was really, the adults didn't even have a key. I was always the one just, running down and opening the shelter and making sure everybody's down there. And I think because I was so afraid of death, I was so afraid of dying, because it was, it was constantly surrounded by that. You turned on the news and you saw death, you went to school, and I had friends that were affected by it and maybe hit by bombs. And
your parents, were they going to work during that time? Or
my mom was, a stay-home mom. We were 8 kids, so she stayed home with us. But my dad was a politician. So he was actually very much involved in a lot of things, politics in Lebanon. He was an entrepreneur as well, and he had businesses. So he was a public speaker, a poet, and a writer.
So was he living in a lot of fear? Because he probably knew a lot more what was going on.
He knew a lot more what was going on.
Yes.
And for sure he was living in fear. And his stories are even crazier than mine. Obviously he went through a lot, but it was constant, you never knew. It wasn't anything where you had a warning. So it wasn't like, tomorrow we're going to bomb, so get in the shelter. It was literally immediately. You'd be sitting in a cafe, you'd be sitting in a restaurant, you're at school, you're at home, and all of a sudden you just hear that whistle and it's coming for you. And so at the age of 5, Melissa, I remember I knew from the sound of the whistle in which direction where the bomb was coming from. Is it coming from north? Is it coming from east? Is it coming from south? I knew at that age where that bomb, just from the sound of the whistle. And I knew which direction to run.
I couldn't imagine, everybody that's listening that has a 5-year-old to know, can you imagine them lining to that and be like, I got to listen for the bomb and the shelters and fearing for the life of the parents.
Definitely. I mean, it wasn't something normal that a normal 5-year-old should go through. It wasn't anything that a 5-year-old should not know what a sound of a bomb is. Yeah. A 5-year-old should not be woken up by a bomb falling outside their balcony and the light is the sky is being lit up with bombs. Do
you remember any health, to live on a fear like that every day? Do you remember anything that was maybe were you not hungry as much, or there, do you remember that as a child affecting you in some ways?
I remember, and this is interesting because as I got older, and I think I was around 25 or 26, I started to feel so much anxiety, like panics, and I couldn't put a finger on it. And I said, where is that coming from? Like, why am I waking up and feeling like I'm going to have a panic attack? And I had to sit down and really look back at my younger years, because when I was growing up, I didn't think anything of what I went through. I didn't really sort of process it. I never processed my experience and my trauma.
Because you left, older. You were 14,
I was 14,
right?
And I thought it was just a way of life. Like, that's just how everybody, lives.
And when you moved to America, you have to say, I mean, this is incredible that you come and you're like, wait, high school, you got to skip high school.
Of course. So for me, going back to your question, what do I remember at the time health-wise? And I remember now when I close my eyes and I look back at those moments, I remember being in the shelter, and I remember screaming and going, Mom, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And my heart, it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, and my chest would be so tight. And my poor mom would be like, what are we going to do to get our mind off of it? And so sometimes these sort of what I call now panic attacks, as I was younger, it would happen randomly throughout the day, even when there's no bombs, because I think it was my body trying to process the trauma. And as soon as I heard bombs far away, I would start to feel that elephant sitting on my chest. And my mom would tell me, like, let's go to the neighbor's house and turn on the TV and play with your friends. And she was trying to get my mind off of it. Yeah. And now when I look back at it, I'm like, that's where my panic, attack started. It was really started out in the shelter when I was 5 and 6 and 7. But I never really knew that that's what they were. So yeah, I remember screaming like, I can't breathe. And I would try to take a deep breath, but it just wouldn't go in. It would just kind of stop. And then I had to do these shallow breaths because one deep breath just would not go into my lungs. And yeah, so there was so many moments like this. And, growing up where you just had to pray. And I remember just holding the cross and just praying like 1,000 Hail Marys and 1,000 Our Fathers and just praying and saying, at the age of 5, I would say, I just want to see myself at 6. Like, please God, let me live until I just want to see what my face looks like at 6. Oh, wow. And then I would turn 6 and I would say, please let me live until I'm 7. I just want to see what I look like. And so it was year by year, I would just beg God at night when I'm sleeping and praying to just survive another year and just to see myself at, the next age and the next age. And so it was a hard way of growing up. I mean, it just made you grow up fast and it puts you in a, fear. It's a constant trauma and constant fear. Your body, your nervous system is always
on edge. Yeah.
Always on edge.
Yeah. And it's hard to survive in that state.
For sure.
But you did for so long.
It's chaos. It's pure chaos. And you're in it. And I think the worst thing also is that it's nothing that is actually expected. So if, it wasn't like there was a warning where you're like, okay, let me get ready slowly. It was kind of, you're somewhere and you're sleeping and it just like, boom, like bang. And so
you always have to be ready.
It was always that waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah. The anticipation.
And
like
you carry that into your adulthood because, even when I was an adult, I always was waiting for something bad to happen. I think chaos felt comfortable to me.
Yeah.
And it was my like comfort zone. So yeah, I mean, you go through so much as a child that it really traumatizes you and affects you as an adult.
Yeah. Almost like those limited beliefs that stay with you, 100%. Right? Yeah. And that was safety for you to just keep, when fear comes back, you kind of revert and go back to what you know.
That's what you know as a child. I mean, when you've grown up in that environment where chaos and death and fear and fight or flight mode, and your nervous system is constantly, as an adult you sort of crave it. It's almost like that's what you're comfortable with.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's what your body knows, and the body keeps the score too. So it's always stays trapped in you, right? Sure. And affecting you in your health. And and I'd love to tell everyone that when you moved and you're 14, you stayed very resilient because did your parents come across?
So actually, my dad stayed behind. Okay. Because, he was a politician. He was involved in some, certain things, and he wanted to stay there, and we had businesses, so he couldn't leave either. He's like, I got to be here for the house and the businesses and run and all of that stuff. So my mom came with us for about, I want to say a couple of months, and then she left.
And then she left as well. So then you were alone with your siblings.
I was alone with my siblings.
Wow.
And so it was sort of, I grew up, and I say this all the time, it was sort of going through puberty and trying to find myself at 14, but it wasn't just your normal teenage person trying to do normal teenage things. Because
you didn't speak English.
I didn't speak English.
You spoke French though. Tu parles français?
Yeah, je parle français. Yeah. So when we escaped Lebanon and we came here, we just came here on vacation. We're thinking we're just going to come visit my brothers who were here in college and they had graduated and they were working. And little did I know that this was going to be my home and my life. And we thought we'll come for like a couple weeks or a month or whatever. And then we'll go back home. The situation will get better and we'll get back home. I'm going to go into high school and go back to seeing my friends and my cousins and my family and my neighbors. And after a month of being here, the situation got even worse that my dad said, you guys are not coming back. You're just going to stay here. And at the time, like I said, my Arabic was my first language and French was my second. And I barely spoke English. I was just learning English as a third language. And so my dad decided, called my mom and said, we need to find Guitta a high school. And also my older brother was about 1.5 years older than me. And so they looked for high schools and they got me in and they tested me and they said, well, she's just beyond her years. Like she needs to be in college. Like she's already 4 years of high school would be a waste of time for her. Wow. And I remember just looking and going, I don't even speak English. How am I gonna go to college? And I barely speak the language. Wow. So they decided to put me in high school for 3 months just for the graduating, because it was towards the end of the year.
Okay.
And I remember just going like April, May or something like that. And I graduated 3 months later.
Even not knowing the language very well.
And I remember getting like honors in calculus and all I graduated with like honors. Don't ask me how that.
Well, because you're a brilliant woman. Yeah.
I did. And so, yeah, I remember being asked to the prom, and my mom goes, absolutely not. You are not going. And and to talk about the social aspect of it, I was 14 and graduating with 18-year-olds, and they were going to the prom and getting dressed up and having all this fun. And, my mom was like, no, you're 14. You're not going to a prom. And I remember just felt like this outsider. Like,
do you feel pretty lonely then?
Oh yeah. It was a very lonely journey because number one, I didn't speak the language. Number two, I didn't feel yet that I belonged because, it's a different culture. It's, in high school in Lebanon, we went to a all-girl Catholic high school. So it was very strict. I mean, we had nuns, our hair had to be up, no makeup, no earrings, no jewelry. And then I come here and they put me in a Catholic high school in Connecticut. And I remember going to high school and I walked it, and this was a culture shock for me. I remember going and we had uniforms here. And I remember wearing a uniform and I'm thinking this is Lebanon, right? So I'm putting my hair up in a ponytail, no makeup, no earrings, nothing. And I walk into the bathroom at the high school in Connecticut and the girls were spraying their hair with makeup. I mean, they're with hairspray, the makeup, the lip gloss. And I was shocked. I was like culture. I stood there and I looked at myself and I remember I was so humble and I looked at myself and I go, like that's gotta change.
You're like, oh.
And the next day I showed up with like full on makeup.
Oh, I love it. You're like,
hair was down. I'm like, no, we're bringing Guitta back.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, it was definitely such a different culture in so many ways. And I really had to immerse myself and make friends and, learn English. And I started watching movies to learn English and listening to, more music and things like that. And, made friends. And I was really adamant about losing my accent and not having an accent because I had that craving of like, I got to be American.
Just
and
fit in.
I got to fit in and I got to belong here. So I don't want anyone knowing I have an accent and where I'm from and that sort of thing.
Because I guess at that age too, people don't want to be different, right?
100%.
Kids don't want to be different.
Yeah. Had I been older, maybe in my 20s, I probably wouldn't have cared. But I think because I was, at 14, that's such a delicate age because you're growing into adulthood and you're learning who you are. And so, being in a new country, you don't speak the language, you don't have your parents around, and all of a sudden you're being thrown with 18, 19-year-olds that are 4 or 5 years ahead of you and in every way, socially, physically, all that stuff. I think it was it was not that to say it was traumatizing, but it was definitely a hard journey. I mean, I didn't just have to find myself and I wasn't surrounded by, family and friends that I could be comfortable growing in that environment. I had to not just figure out who I am at 14.
You had to be so independent, so strong, right?
I had to be independent, but I also had to figure out a new language and a new culture and new friends and looking around and not having, the structure that I had back home. And, that was really hard. That was really hard for me because I didn't have that, community that I was used to. I didn't have the home structure that I was used to. And so it was definitely tough.
And also then you started college, right?
And
How old were you?
So I was almost 15 when I started college.
Wow.
And I started college, almost 15 years old. And that was another whole other experience by itself because, I was still learning English.
I couldn't imagine. Is there any other 15-year-old in college? I mean, I think
Hauser,
you're the only one.
I don't know. Do you remember Doogie Howser, Melissa?
Yes, I do. Even though I grew up in Quebec City,
right,
I do know.
Yeah. I feel like everyone knows Doogie Howser. But yeah, it was definitely being in college at 14, almost 15 was very challenging because a lot of the kids were over 18, they were drinking, they were driving, they were going out and going to parties. And here I am, I'm still, barely 15. I'm living with my brothers and, my parents were like, you got to take care of your sister and, you got to be strict on her. And so, there was parties where my friends and, from school, from college wanted to go to, and they would invite me, and I'm like, I can't.
Did you ever get into the parties just so it kind of fit in a little,
The only parties that I was allowed to go to were with my brothers. So they were definitely old. They were always older. They were kids in their 20s, 21, 22, older kids. So this was my hangout. It was really, I was forced to grow up so fast because I was hanging out with kids so much older than me and adults at that age. And also I was always, because my brothers were, strict on me because they felt that, they had to take care of me. If I did go to a party, it was with them. And, they were older, they were in their 20s. And so I had to hang out with their crowd and their friends. And so I didn't have the teenage years. I completely missed out on the teenage years.
And
I didn't have
childhood. It sounds also your childhood, right? As much living that fear. So it's almost like you never had that playfulness as much. Do you find like that in your childhood? Not so as much as the playfulness. It always had to be kind of very serious in some ways, right?
And in a funny and weird way, I was always the one at home that made everybody laugh. And I think because I was the baby, and I hated, as long as I could remember, I hated negative energy. And I always felt it was like the pressure was on me to make everyone laugh. And even when the house was sad, even when things would happen back home, I always would get up and grab a microphone and start telling jokes or, pretending I'm a flight attendant or doing something funny. I was like the stand-up comedian in the family. And I remember my mom every night around 7:30, she's like, okay, Guitta, get up and perform for us, make us laugh. And so I was always that person that was always happy, very energetic, and
kind
always
of that light, that beacon of light.
Yes, always. And even to this day, my brothers are always like, I don't know how you always like want to go out and want to have fun and where you get your energy from, and that love for life. And I've always had that as a child, even in the bad days and even in my worst days, I've always had that. And I was always been a happy kid. And I carried that as well and into my adulthood, even though college was hard and I felt like I was robbed of my teen years and having the freedom to hang out with kids my age and talk about boys maybe or whatever it is. I didn't have that. I was forced to grow up with, at 14, 15 kids that were 19, 20 years old. And there's a difference there. There's definitely a difference in, socially, there's a difference in the conversation that was going on. There's a difference in the freedom. I didn't have the freedom. I couldn't drive. I was still too young to drive. So I couldn't have a car. I couldn't go places I wanted to go. And so I missed out on, a lot of things. And I was forced to be with people 6, 7 years older than me.
Older. Yeah. So you grew up so fast.
I did.
And then how old were you when you started to be a dentist as well?
So I graduated college. I think I was 17 and a half, something like that. And I went to dental school after that. And I graduated. I was the youngest to graduate dental school. And even in dental school, I was very, when you say serious, although I was a fun one and I was always happy, I was always so mature at the same time. And people, when they looked at me, they thought I was way older. And when I would say my age, they're like, there's no way you could be only 17. And I remember at 17 being so mature and wise and always thinking ahead, like, if I do this, how is this going to affect me 10, 15 years down the line? And so my mind was always running because I trained that way. And so when I was in dental school, I really hardly made a lot of friends. I was very quiet. I kept to myself a lot, and I had a very tight group of friends. And even in dental school, I remember my friends went out and partied and went to clubs, and not once in 4 years of dental school had I gone to a club in Boston or partied or did anything like that. And I was so anti everything. I was so anti-drinking, anti-drugs. And I think the first drink I've ever had, I want to say it was my 4th year of dental school.
Okay.
And I tried a beer and I was like, oh my God, this is disgusting.
This is awful. Yeah.
Why do people even drink? And so I was always that mature girl, but I was always, happy, but I was always very mature.
Yeah.
And
wise beyond your years. So ultimately it was sort of like a gift. Everything that you've kind of gone through made you so resilient, so strong, and driven, right?
Very driven, very driven.
And I always wanted so successful, to be, right? And it's so driven, and it sounds like you had your business and married and whatnot and successful. But then I think, like you said, you're give and give and give. But I think at one point you kind of forgot to give back to yourself.
For sure.
Right?
I think when you have that personality too, when when you're trying to be successful, and I always had pictured this thing in my head, like I want this and I want that, and I want the perfect family, and I want, you know, the handsome husband, and I want the successful life and the beautiful home. And I think my focus was so much on everything that I was attaining. And I was always a giver. I was always, you know, wanting everybody around me to have everything. And I've always worked hard. And so when I got married and had my kids, it was always pouring into them, pouring into the business, pouring into the employees, pouring into the patients, pouring into my husband, our social life, and I did it all. So I took it upon myself. I'm an Aquarius too. So we love, you know how we are. We're very independent.
Yes.
And we like to do things our way, and you know, that's just how we are.
I know. Didn't you say like all your lunch break, you'd go volunteer at the school because you're like, I got to be a good mom. I got to be an entrepreneur, a good wife.
And you know, I had a little bit of, I'm not going to lie, a little bit of perfectionism too.
I think a lot of dentists deal are very much because you deal with like minute, you know, details,
tiny little meticulous things. So to me, in my head, I had to be the perfect mom. And I think also because I grew up in such a chaotic, you know, childhood. And I think also because I had so much anxiety from that as an adult that really manifested itself later on. And I'll share some stories with you. I wanted my kids not to have experienced any sort of anxiety as a child, because I think I went through so much of it. I was protecting them, and I wanted them to have this, like, live in a little bubble and have this perfect life and not know what it's like to be sad or upset or not be able to have something. Or so I gave so much, and they would like go and I jumped at them, and you know, every little word that came out of my mouth, okay, here you go, you have it. So I wanted to be the perfect mom, and I wanted to work hard. So yeah, I was working really hard. I was working 6 days a week. I would volunteer at my lunch hour from 1 to 2. I would go to school and, you know, be the art lady or be the lunch lady, and then run back to work and start to see patients from 2 to 6, and then run home and make dinner. And although I had a nanny and I had, you know, someone to help obviously clean the house and everything, I wanted to be hands-on mom. And so I was like, I'll bathe the kids, I'll feed them when I get home, like leave it, because I wanted that bonding with my kids. And, you know, even it got to a point where I remember, you know, I would sleep next to one kid at night and then scratch them and read them books, put one and run to the other room. And I just didn't want help from anyone. I wasn't even asking for help from my husband. And I just took it upon myself. I had this thing in my mind where I could do it all. Yeah. I could do it all.
Because I think, don't you find a lot of moms, like when you career, feel the guilt? The guilt.
You feel the guilt of like, I'm a working mom. I got to be there for my kids. So, you know, I have to do this. And so I did. I did it all. Anything you can imagine. I had 5-6 parties, you know, a year, big parties. I was the you know, the Easter party, the Halloween party. Everybody was
like me. Yeah, we used to have a big Easter party that we do with 100 people coming. You know?
Yeah, it was always minimum 100 people, 150 people in our house. Everyone, the whole school came to our house. The whole school knew who we were and who I was, and they were like, "Where's the party? When's the party?" You know, Guitta. And so I was that mom that just like made their childhood perfect and wanted everything to be perfect. But, you know, with all of that said, I had forgotten about me. I had forgotten about who I was, what I needed. And I was pouring so much into everybody else that I forgot to really take care of myself. I forgot about self-care. I forgot what, you know, how to ask for help. And to me, asking for help meant that I was weak. I didn't like that, because I always had a very strong personality and I was always independent. And this is part of why I wanted to become a doctor, because I never wanted to rely on a guy to support me. I never wanted to, you know, I'm very feminine, and I want, you know, I love my husband, I love my family, but at the end of the day, I wanted my independence. And I wanted to be able to know that, God forbid, something happens to my husband, or I know I can support myself. And so part of that also comes with the fact that I put the pressure on myself to say, I could do it all. I could do it all. I don't need help. No, I got this. I got that. The kids were sick and they'd have fevers, you know, for 4 days. I slept next to them. I never asked for help. I'd be exhausted. I'd get up the next day and go to work. And so with that came, you know, the price of exhaustion. And so little by little, it was chipping away at me. And I realized that my mental health was going down. I started feeling anxious. And that's when my kids were around probably the age of like 7 and 8 or something like that. I really started to feel like anxiety again. And I felt that like that feeling in my chest again that I had when I was 5 and 6 and 7-year-old in the shelter. And I was like, why am I feeling this way? Like, what is wrong with me? And as I was sharing with you yesterday, you know, I would go to Disneyland and I couldn't even get into like Pirates of the Caribbean ride or the Little Mermaid.
Because it's so dark, you know, in dark. There. Yes.
And I think all the running around and like really not doing self-care and giving, I was collapsing, and that collapse brought all that chaos back into my life. And it took me back to those days of like being a child and like running away. And so, yeah, I remember one day I was sitting in my office and I literally just like started losing feelings in my, you know, my fingers, and I started to get tingly. I got extremely dizzy, and I just felt like the room was just like spinning, and my legs just felt really weak, and my heart was just going crazy. And I started having like these arrhythmias, and I couldn't even talk. I had to like literally cough so many times to get my rhythm back into, you know, the correct rhythm. And my husband was in the office that day, thankfully. And so I called him right away and I said, you know, you need to come in. Like something's going on. And they ended up rushing me to the cardiologist. And as I was sitting on the table and hooked up to EKGs and stuff, the cardiologist said, you know, you are having so many heart arrhythmias, and this is all due to stress. Because, you know, I was pretty healthy at the time. I was always thin. I was always, you know, run a lot. I was cardio queen. So I cycled a lot and I did a lot of running. And so he goes, your heart is perfect. Like, you have a heart of an athlete. There's nothing wrong with your heart after 4 days of testing. He goes, it's all stress and anxiety. And, you know, he looked at me and he goes, well, when was the last time you actually took a lunch hour? And, you know, as I was telling you, I'm like, what lunch hour? I mean, dentists typically, we don't get a lunch hour. Yeah. You know, there's no such thing as like leave the office, let's go sit down and order and come back. I've never done that in over a decade of like having my own office. Yeah,
hygiene too. I never take
lunch. And if you're lucky, you jump into the lunchroom, you have a quick little bite, you jump back into your office, you do your charting, or I'm volunteering or whatnot. And I said, you know, to be honest with you, doc, I said, I've never taken a lunch hour. And that's when he looked at me and he goes, you know, you keep going at the rate you're going, then your kids are not going to have a mom, your husband's not going to have a wife, your employees are not going to have a boss, and your patients won't have a dentist. So you need to make a decision. Like, you're at a crossroad where you need to change something in your life. Yeah. And after 4 days of testing, I remember going home, and as happy as I was that nothing physically was wrong with me, like I didn't have any, you know, heart issues or anything like that, I realized that mentally I was in such a bad place, and the exhaustion and the burnout has hit me so bad that it started to show itself in a physical way.
Yes. And so the body will start speaking.
Exactly.
For sure.
And I think I've been going through so many years of running around and building this and building the office and raising the kids and making sure I'm the perfect wife and I'm making sure I look good. And
so many people think they can do that, especially when they're like 20s. They're like, oh, I can grind, I can grind. But they don't understand. That's why I love sharing stories like that, because they think they're invincible.
100%.
You know, my husband did the very same thing when we opened up the practice. 6 days a week. We lived downstairs. We just kind of grinded. But it shows up. It shows
up later.
It shows up.
And it really, and I now that I look back, there was so many moments where I think I had my body was telling me slow down. And I remember every 2 to 3 months, I would tell my husband, I'm just exhausted and I can't put my feet, like, why am I so tired? Yeah. Why am I so exhausted? And I would wake up and the second my eyes opened, I would be like, having anxiety already. And I said, why am I having anxiety? Like, nothing has happened. The day hasn't even started. Why am I feeling anxious? The second my eyes opened up. And so it started showing up, all this exhaustion and the running around and the grind really started to show up in a physical way because I was not paying attention to it.
Because were you just like getting up and hitting the ground running?
Yeah. Right? I was getting up. I was just running to my kids, waking them up, getting them ready, breakfast, making sure my daughter looks perfect with the perfect ponytail, getting them to school. From school, I would rush to work, huddle, as you know, we all huddle in the morning with our staff, starting to, I have a bunch of operatories from patient to patient to patient to patient. At lunch, I would run back to school. I would volunteer at school. I would come back at 2:00, work from 2 to 6 p.m. I would get home at 6:30, get the kids, shower them, bathe them, put them to sleep, feed them, read them the book, and scratch them. You know, we had this thing where I spent a lot of time scratching their backs and massaging them. I was that mom, okay?
Yes, I love
and
that.
by the time I got to bed, it was like 9:30, and I was just exhausted.
Oh, I can imagine. And that's 6 days a week.
6 days a week.
What would you do on a Sunday? Were you
Sundays, I was like, it's Sundays. I got to be with the, I have to do something fun with the kids. So I would get up Sunday, and I'll make sure we always had plans, and we were always out of the house, and it was always something fun for the kids. And I would get home on Sunday night, and I'm just exhausted because I haven't had a second to myself all week or a weekend. Wow. And so I was going and pouring into so much, into everyone's cup, but not into mine. And that's when I really collapsed. And I got to a point where I had to make a decision. How do I change my life? What do I need to do? I still have to be a mom, 6:30 a.m. and on. I still have to be a boss. And so that's really when I sat down and I started journaling. And I realized that the only way I can change my life around is if I take time for myself to really sit in my thoughts and have a purpose. Because I felt like, what was the purpose of everything? It kind of got to a point where I lost purpose and I lost fulfillment because I was doing so much that whatever I was doing didn't really bring me joy anymore. The office didn't bring me joy. Dentistry didn't bring me joy. Even sometimes going out with friends on the weekend wasn't fun anymore because I was exhausted and tired and I didn't really want to hang out with anyone. And so it got to a point where I had to figure out, how do I change my life?
Yeah, because you had everything, but there was no joy anymore.
I had everything.
Yeah, fulfillment. Yeah. Yes.
And there was so many times, Melissa, when I would sit and I would say, why am I anxious? Why am I not happy? I have the beautiful home. I live in Orange County, like where everybody wants to live. Yeah. I have the thriving office. I have 2 beautiful, healthy kids. I have a husband that adores me. I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't figure out why I'm anxious and why I'm sad. And sometimes I would cry for no reason. I'm like, what is going on? And so it wasn't until I really woken up and I realized I'm not taking care of me. There's no self-care at all. I wouldn't go out with my girlfriends at night. I never had girls' night out because I was like, nope, not taking time away from my kids. I never went on girls' trips ever away from my kids. I always took the kids on every vacation. And you know how it is. You go on vacation, but really you're with the kids. You're still a mom. And so there was so many things that I had so much guilt about that I forced myself to always be home with them, always take them on every vacation with me, even bathe them, even though I had a nanny. I was like, no, I'll shower them and bathe them because I want to be the mom. And so I finally realized that I have to take time for myself. And the only thing that could change was me starting to wake up earlier. And that's when my journey, really transformation journey started. I started to wake up little by little. I would shift my alarm another half an hour earlier. And my morning started becoming my sanctuary. It was just life-changing. I would grab the journal. I started journaling. I started writing my feelings down and what I felt and what am I thankful for every day. And I started meditating a lot. Oh my gosh. I mean, if you look at my Peloton meditation classes, it was just
that's so good.
One class after one
Did
class.
Did it incorporate some breath in there as well?
Sure.
In the meditation?
There was a lot of breathing. And I think when you're anxious all the time, you forget to breathe. And I love that you're doing all these breathwork exercises because I literally would stop breathing sometimes, and this is why you experience that tightness in the chest. And so, I started waking up early and I built a home gym and I said, rain or shine, I'm going to work out every day. And little by little, that gym just became almost, it was almost my safe place. Yeah, that gym became my shelter. Kind of when I was little and the shelter was my safe place, that gym became my shelter. And I started really getting into, as I was getting stronger and working out and lifting weights and taking care of myself, my mental health started to change. Little by little, I started
Were
to
you asking for more help? I know you had mentioned
and
you started asking your husband for more help.
100%. I actually, I talked to someone and they said, why don't you ask your husband to start helping out a little bit, maybe ask him to do breakfast, here and there. And so I did. I would go into the gym and when the kids woke up, I would ask my husband, do you mind today making breakfast for the kids? Do you mind dropping off the kids? And, at first it was really getting used to, there was a lot of changes in the house. Certain things had to happen because I wasn't anymore afraid of asking help, even though I still felt guilty about it. But I was like, why not? why aren't our husbands capable of helping out? Why aren't they capable of making breakfast? I mean, if he's
as women, we always think, even though you're both working,
right,
you still wanted to take all of it on. I think it's that we're such that mothering, that nurturing, 100%. It's in our body, but then
it is.
But then your health was on the line.
My
life
was on the line.
Yes.
And the way I looked at it and I said, if I keep on doing everything, I'm not going to be around. There's not going to be Guitta anymore. And there's not going to be a mom for these two beautiful kids. And so little by little, I started asking for help. I started asking him, do you mind today? And maybe pick 2 days a week where you can make breakfast, when maybe you have to be at work at 9 and not 8, you do the breakfast. I'll do the breakfast when I go to work at 9 and not 7:30 or 8. Mm-hmm. And so I started restructuring things at home. And a lot of it had to also learn to let go, because I was holding on to so much. The pillows had to be fluffed a certain way, and the house had to be perfect, and everything had to be picture perfect.
Well, that control probably brought you safety, right?
It did.
From
control
when you were
for me brought me safety. And so even though I was working, and sometimes I would get home maybe 15 minutes to 10 minutes before my husband did, I was always like, I gotta light a candle. If there was anything on the counter, I had to clean it, because when he came home, it had to be the beautiful, perfect home. And so I had to let go of that. And I was like, it's okay if the pillow's not fluffed today. I'm okay with it. And so it was a learning experience where I had to ask for help, but I also had to let go of certain things that at the end of the day didn't matter so much.
So almost like that shift your perspective, right?
Shift in my perspective.
So probably constantly that mind shift nonstop, right?
And that perfectionism of, everything had to be perfect around me, and I had to be this perfect everything. And I realized that it's okay to, it's okay not to every single night maybe read 15 to 20 minutes and scratch my kids for 30 minutes until they fell asleep. And so I had to also teach my kids to sometimes, mommy's a little tired. I'm going to scratch you for 5 minutes. Mommy's going to go to bed. And so I started little by little doing certain changes. I started taking, a little bit of lunch hour. I still have to this day, don't always get a lunch hour. But I started going outside, and sometimes just for lunch hour, just sitting in the sun for 5 minutes, and vitamin D helped a lot. I had major vitamin D deficiency, although I lived in Southern California. And, little by little, I stopped working on Saturdays. I said, you know what? I'm just not going to work on Saturdays. I opened up 1 or 2 days a week where I would stay late at work and took Saturdays off. And for people that work, I offered 5 and 5:30 p.m. appointments. And then I had the weekends to myself, and that really helped me a lot. That really changed a lot of things. And, and again, I would ask my husband, how about you plan this vacation this time? You plan dinner. And it was always me every time, every Wednesday or Thursday. I would send him text message and I'll say, Thursday, we're going out here. Friday, it's here. Saturday, we're doing this with that family. And Sunday, we're having a barbecue and I'm inviting everyone over. And so that had to also change. Yeah. And I would say, what do you want to do on Thursday? Do you mind planning Thursday night? Do you mind planning date night? And so I had to let go and delegate certain things. Yeah. At work, I had to let go of a lot of things. I would always run to the front and try to take over and fix things for everybody. And then I realized I'm not a fixer. I don't need to fix things. I really just need to be the boss who inspires their employees. And I'm there for them when they need me. But I don't have to be that, the boss that's constantly having to fix their mistakes and fix them and make sure they're okay all the time. And so I had to change my attitude at work a lot as well with my employees. And I was taking on so much pressure from work as well. And so there was a lot of shifting. There was a lot of changing in every aspect of my life. And I started going out on girls' nights because I'm like, I need my girlfriends. I need to talk.
Community, sisterhood,
sisterhood.
Yes.
So, once every 2 weeks I'd go out now, and I still do with my girlfriends. And, my husband at first wasn't used to it. Now he is, and so it's definitely a change. I took my first girls trip, I want to say 3 years ago. I've been married for 18 years. For 14 years, I never went anywhere with the girls. I was finally like, I'm going. We're going to go to New York and we're going to go for a girls trip. Fun. And mommy's not going to feel guilty.
Yes.
And so there's so many aspects that came into play little by little that I had to learn to let go of the guilt. And, we don't ever let go of the guilt completely.
I know.
As
yes,
know.
It is hard. It's very hard. Yeah.
We're women and we're mothers and we're wives and stuff. So the guilt never goes away.
Yes.
But you learn along the way that you're also human and you have needs. You
find that balance.
You find
right?
and you find that balance. And it's never the perfect balance. And everyone always says to me, how do you do it? Like, how are you always looking perfect and you're always dressed up and your hair and makeup is on and, you know, you're working so hard and you're a boss and you're a mom and you travel and it's not about having the perfect balance. Cause sometimes when you look good, you have to let go of certain things, right? And then when you're at work, I don't always look good. I have my hair in a bun, and sometimes I'll even like shoot myself, like do stories at work. I'm like, my hair looks like shit right now. I look like a truck ran me over, because I don't want people to feel that I'm always perfect, because I'm not. I mean, there's days where I'm covered in blood and saliva, and I show that on Instagram. I say, I'm covered in blood and saliva. My hair is a mess. Like the other day, I mean, my hair was in a ponytail and it was a disaster. And I took my mask off and I took a selfie and a video, and I literally straight out said it, because there's no such thing as always looking good and always looking perfect and always being perfect. And so, yeah, it was definitely a balance. It was definitely learning to balance things out and definitely letting go and delegating. Oh my God, I had to delegate so much. And now I hardly ever come to the front. I'll say, if there's no way you guys can figure it out, call me. Because I was running from the front to the back, from the front to the back. And, you know, I had to do the dentistry, but I also had to, you know, tell them how to deal with the insurances and how to deal with the patients and how to tell this patient, now this procedure didn't work, we got to do this. And so delegating and letting go, I had to let go at work, where I'm like, I hired you, I'm paying you this money because I want you to take care of this. If you can't come to me and I'll help you, my door's always open. And little by little, I had to let go at work as well. And so, yeah, it was. So
do you see a big change in your health? Like as far as your heart, like now?
Oh, yes. Oh, 100%. My heart arrhythmia stayed with me for about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. And then little by little, when I started to do all these little changes, I started to feel, I would wake up in the morning and I didn't have that elephant on my chest anymore. And I would wake up with a smile on my face. And it's so funny because I would go, before I went to bed, I would run downstairs and get the coffee machine, because I was so excited to wake up in the morning and to have that alone time by myself and like be in my thoughts.
I'm a 5 a.m. club too.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes.
And so instead of before, I would go to bed and I would wake up. I'm like, oh God, it's Thursday, and Thursday I have to, you know, I'm doing this and I'm seeing this many patients. It was like, I'm excited to wake up on Thursday. And so I would do these little changes, the things that made me happy. And it's so funny sometimes people say like, money doesn't bring you happiness. And it's so true, because my cup of coffee and my 30 minutes alone in the morning became my happiness. And those things are free. I mean, a cup of coffee and sitting alone is free.
Yes.
And so those little things, and just like watching the sunrise and the quiet in the morning and just putting on my headphones and working out and being in that moment, all the free things that you can imagine really is what cured me and what healed me. And little by little, I started to wake up in the morning happy, and that anxiety started to chip away. It just went away little by little. And I started to feel like there's a person here. Like I started to like really sit down and go, who is Guitta? Like, who am I? And what do I need? And I started pouring into my own cup. And not to say that I stopped giving, because, you know, 6:45 came and I was like, Mom, Dr. Harb, honey. So I was still the wife, the mother, the boss, the dentist. But having that routine in the morning of self-care
to fill your
purpose.
Cup. Yes. Yeah.
And I had a purpose. I felt like I was fulfilled. I had a purpose. I was living with you know, more clarity to you know.
Yeah, because when you're in that space of meditation, well, you do find more clarity of your purpose.
Clear, yes. Your head. So when I get to work, I wasn't as anxious. I was happy. And my staff would say, why are you so hyper today? Like, why are you so happy? And how many cups of coffee did you have? And I said, honestly, I just went for like a 5 mile run. Do you find that
there was a shift in the practice, or even your patient? Because if you're calm, and because most patients will come in with lots of fear and anxiety, right? So if you're regulated and you're in such close proximity, do you find that you were in better space to take care of patients that were driven with fear and anxiety 100%. Themselves, right?
I mean, before, sometimes I was so tense that you could cut the tension with a knife. I mean, you could feel the amount of anxiety I'm having as I'm drilling, as I'm working on patients. I would have literally sometimes almost panic attacks as I'm working. And now it's just like my patients come in and they're like, we love it here. I mean, the environment has changed. I'm happier. I'm easygoing. I sit down, I chat with my patients. I talk to them. They tell me their issues, their problems. We discuss things. And it's funny because we have, new patients obviously always coming in, and the first thing they say, they're like, this is the most friendliest, like calmest environment we've ever been in.
That's good.
And it's all because of my mindset and how I've changed my attitude and how I feel that it's projecting on my patients, on my employees, on my staff, and everyone around me. And so if you walk into our office right now, there's not one single patient that doesn't come in and goes, this office is so bright.
Yes.
It's such a bright office. Good. It's so happy. You guys are so friendly. And our reviews are always, obviously it's about my work too, but it's mainly about the staff, the environment, how friendly we are, how easygoing we are, how comfortable patients feel, and how peaceful the environment is. And that's really it all because it stemmed from me changing.
You taking care of you.
Yeah, taking care of me.
That's why I always tell dentists it's so important to take care of them because it's called mirror neurons, right? You're standing close proximity. So the patient will kind of mirror what you're feeling as well. And if they're already feeling anxiety, but you can help calm them with just you being calm as well, and so
and certain things that you do. Yes. I mean, before, for instance, I'd run from room to room and I never took the time to really sit in my office alone and take a minute. So now if I have a hard case and I'm having a hard time, I literally tell my staff, I'll intercom the front and I go, I'm in my office for 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes. I literally will say that. I'll go in my office. I meditate for 5 minutes. I take a deep breath. I just sit quietly. I take my time, 5, and it's never really more than 5 minutes, but even that 5 minutes of just like taking a moment for yourself. Yeah. And sometimes I'll lock my door because you know how it is in the dental office. They barge right in like Kramer from Seinfeld. I'm like, you guys, you know what knocking is? And even sometimes I'll go hide in the bathroom because I know they're going to knock on my door. So I will go and lock the bathroom and I will sit in the bathroom and I just lean against the wall and I just take 5 minutes for myself and I just breathe. That's so good. And that gets me through the day. And I come out and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go again. So, as opposed to before, it was just chaos and running around and not really like my day was just. Yeah, patient to patient. So carrying their fear to another patient with fear and you're never really filling up your cup 100%. As well, right? And it's funny, Melissa, to think of it because my schedule hasn't changed. The schedule itself hasn't changed. I don't see less patients. I'm not working. The only really thing I've changed was stop working on Saturdays, but I'm still busy. I'm still seeing just the same amount of patients. But really, it's my mindset has changed and my attitude has changed. And now taking that time in the morning for myself to center myself. So when the kids are up, I've already had my coffee. I've already meditated. I've already prayed. I've already worked out. I'm in such good mode at that point. My kids wake up. I'm like, hello. Like, hi, honey bunny. Like, I'm like, my daughter's like, what's wrong? What's with you? It changes the dynamic for your family too. It changes the dynamic for the family. And when I get to work, I'm like, good morning, you guys. I love my staff. And hi. I walk in and I say hi to every single person. And it's just it becomes vital, right? To have that practice. Yeah. I see that for myself as well. And I always say, well, no, I need it. I have to have that time. You have to have that time. Yeah. And now I don't feel as guilty if I do 3-day retreats or I get away just for me. It's okay. It's okay. In the beginning, I was always like, oh, especially my son had separation anxiety and I'd feel really guilty because they'd be really sad and I would never go away as well, And so, but it was so important because I came back a better mom, more calm. Sure. So I think, and then I think for you as a dentist, seeing so many patients as well, it's important to show up for your patients all calm and regulated 100%. As well. And it's important too when you leave your office to get home and be a good mom and be a good wife and all of that too, because your kids feel it. And it's so funny that, you say that my daughter is now 16 and out of the blue, Melissa, I think it was about, I want to say 6 months ago, we were driving and I don't know what prompted her to say that. Out of the blue, she goes, Mommy, she saw something that reminded her of something. And she goes, Mommy, I don't know why. Oh, it was a picture I think she saw on her phone. She goes, I don't know. And she was young at the time for her to even realize it and see it. She goes, I don't know why, Mommy, but during that part of my life, I remember you weren't happy. For her to say that. Wow. And she was little. I mean, I think at the time she was maybe 7 or 8. So for a 7-year-old to like notice like mom wasn't happy or mom was anxious, it was pretty probably obvious for her. And now she's 16. She goes, I remember during that time, you weren't the same person. You've changed so much. And now you're powerful, you're happy, you're confident, you're always gung-ho, like you're always so positive. She goes, there was a period of time when I was younger that I remember you were sad all the time and you were anxious all the time and stuff. And she could feel it. And I think your kids absorb that energy.
Oh, yes, they do. Did you see signs for that? Your kids carried some of that anxiety as well?
I did. I remember when my daughter was actually 8 or 9, she had such bad separation anxiety. I would drop her off and it came out of the blue. And it's so funny because I would drop her off at school and midday or like late morning, the teacher would call me. She's like, Kayla's having a little bit of anxiety. And it was like literally separation anxiety. It took her about probably a year to get over it. And I couldn't like point my finger as to why she's having separation anxiety. She wanted to be with me all the time. And I think now looking back, I'm like, I think she was worried. I think it was just her, mind going, mommy's not happy or something's wrong with mommy.
I need to be by her.
And I need to be.
Yes.
Yeah. So now looking back and I go, Kayla, like, you really remember when you were stuff? She goes, Mommy, I remember very clearly. And now I remember what it was. It was an Easter picture that she saw that popped up on her phone.
Oh, your big Easter parties too.
It was an Easter picture and we were at brunch and she goes, I don't know why that period of time, I remember you just were not happy and you were sad. And so, yeah, I think your kids take it on as well because it's your energy. And,
yes. Yeah, absolutely. I notice that. I notice that all the time. And I always tell parents, take care. They'll be like, I'm really worried my child is exposing some anxieties and this and that. I said, well, a lot of times they co-regulate with you. How are you been feeling?
How are you feeling?
How have you been living in fear? Have you been so anxious? And a lot of times, yes. I said, well, they're carrying that. Just like, dogs. Dogs do the same. We have 2 dogs and they carry my kids' personalities and anxieties. And so they really mirror us. So I always say 100%. It's so important to work as a parent on themselves. And even for fathers, that grind and want to be, and they forget themselves as well. My husband did the same thing being a business owner and he just forgot to take care of himself.
For sure. It goes towards both male and female. Yes. I mean, and then like your husband, I mean, as dads too, there's so much pressure. And I think it's sometimes even worse for males because they feel like they can't express themselves. They feel like they have to be strong and they're the man and they have to provide and all of that. And there's pressure on them too, to, not to really cry or not to have feelings or not to, so they hold on to that stuff too. And it affects them mentally and it shows up in physical ways as well.
In physical ways. So I love that now that you are inspiring so many. Now you've written a book, right?
Yeah, I'm writing a book. It's about to be published in a few months.
Share the title.
So the title is called The Key Holder. And really,
because you held the key to the shelter.
I was the key holder. And the book is a memoir. I mean, it's a memoir about my childhood and moving here and really just my life and how I overcame adversity and, thrived and all these things. And it's also a motivational book. It started out as actually a memoir, but I wanted to turn it into a how-to and how to thrive and overcome all the things, all the negative things that happen in our lives. Because for me, every negative thing that's happened, I have turned it into something positive. I've actually, worked harder from it. I've, achieved bigger and better things from it. And I've used that pain to turn it into power. And so I have little, little work things that you do at the end.
Yeah, like journal prompts and things.
That you got to do for your little homework at the end of each chapter. And your story doesn't have to be maybe of war. We all have stories. Mine was growing up, in the war and moving here and all the things that I went through. But it could be a divorce. It could be a story like yours, Melissa. And it could be so many things. Abuse. It could be childhood trauma. I don't know what it is, but it's really not about what happened to you, but it's about what you do with that and how you turn it into something positive. And instead of spiraling down, how you rise above it. And that's what the book is all about. So I'm so excited for it to come out and really share it with everyone.
Yeah. When is it coming out?
It's coming out in January, second week of January. We're launching.
Okay. So, I can't wait to read it. And then I know you also have your own podcast.
I do.
And I love the title. title, The Smile Diaries, because even my first book, I called it The Truth Behind the Smiles. And I think we could just so relate, right? We see people smiling all the time, but we never know those stories.
You actually took the words out of my mouth. And it's so funny because one day I woke up and I think it was like 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. And I looked at my husband and I go, starting a podcast. And he goes, you're crazy. Like, as if you don't have enough on your plate already. He's like, why do you want to do that? And I said, you know what? I really want to inspire people and talk about journeys, because a lot of times people look at you and they judge you. And I was just having that conversation with Tyler earlier. People look at you and they just see this person and it's like, oh, well, you've got the house, you've got the thriving practice, you've got the beautiful kids, and things that were handed to her, and I'm sure things were easy for her or whatnot. But people never know what's behind that smile. And I told him, I said, I really want to start a podcast and I want to call it Smile Diaries, because it's the diaries behind the smile. Like, what is behind that? We all walk around smiling and going, we're great, everything's good, how are you? I'm fine. But really, are you fine behind the smile? Or what is your journey? How did you get here? What's going on? And so that really was the point of starting the podcast. And
don't you find that so healing, podcasting?
It is so healing.
Because I feel like every story, even from yours and everybody guest that I have, I feel I learn a lesson on life. It's like a school of life.
Yes. It's almost like therapy. And it's also you feel that sense of community. You realize that you're not the only one that has gone through so much pain or adversity. I mean, just like we were talking last night at dinner, you were listening to my story, I'm listening to yours, and that exchange is just powerful, right? You're like, oh my God, I'm not the only one.
But
right?
Don't you find that you find a common thread of people that are rising above now their pain?
Yeah.
There's a common thread. Like they're starting to work, go within, find that space, sit in prayer, meditation, journaling. I feel like there was that commonality of what 100%. People had to do, that self-realization, and to bring more fulfillment and love into their lives.
100%. I mean, just like, we're talking about fitness. I mean, fitness for me, and I'm sure it is for
therapy.
You. And, people go, what do you do to lose weight or to stay thin? And it's not the thoughts that go through my head when I'm working out. It's how the more I lift weights and the more I run, it does something to my brain. It's really just all about mental health and staying, anxiety free, being happy, having the energy to deal with everything around you, whether it's your kids or your office or your work, whatever it is. But it's not about fitness to me. It's not about looking good and it's not about losing weight. It's really about being strong physically and mentally. Yes. And it's all mental. I mean, when I'm in the gym and I'm lifting weights or I'm running, running is therapy for me. Like I cry on the treadmill all the time. I go for like 4:30, 5 a.m. runs, and I'm half the time I'm crying because it's like, it's all this anxiety and it's therapy.
It's releasing.
And so, and I feel like a lot of people that are really fit and they do that, a lot of it comes from pain too.
Yes.
It's like really releasing that pain and making something out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And discipline.
I know. I used to remember I could run for like 8 miles because I'm like, it was like my meditation, my therapy, and then I'd feel better because I had like this pumped up. I'd feel like almost the anxiety. I said, I need to go for a run.
It's a deflation.
Yes.
And the way I explain it to everyone, people ask me like, how can you run forever? Because I sometimes, like you said, on Saturdays or Sundays, I'd start running and I was like Forrest Gump. I wouldn't stop. I'm like, 1 more mile, 8 miles down, 10 miles later, 1 more mile. And people look at me and go, how do you run 10 miles on the weekend? And honestly, I felt like a balloon was deflated. Yeah. Like it was almost like you put a pin in a balloon and it's just little by little the air is coming out and being deflated. And when I would get home, it was just all these like endorphins just running through my body and like happy hormones and like all that good stuff. And I just felt good. I felt like all the anxiety was taken away from me.
Because you're working through the anxiety since you were born, living in that fear for so long that's trapped in your body. So finding ways to release is so important. I know I've kind of talked to you a little bit about breathwork yesterday, and I truly feel like to help you store all that fear that's in your body is that safe release as well. But, like you said, running, prayer, you know, your faith, you're so grounded in faith, faith
ever
since you were,
is huge.
It is huge, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that, but having, as a child, I mean, we were, my parents were very religious and we grew up, Catholic, but I always say it doesn't matter what your religion is, faith is faith. But knowing that there's a higher power and putting your issues or your problems into someone else's hand and knowing that someone is listening, whoever it is. For me, it was Jesus and Mary and God or whatever it is, it gives you that sense of like relief as well.
Yes.
And so faith for me and praying and knowing that there's a higher power beyond me was a form of therapy. And it still is. I mean, even to this day, and it took me years to realize it, because I would always hear people go, well, God spoke to me and like I heard God's voice. And like my dad used to always say that, like, God spoke to me. I was like, what do you mean? Like, you actually heard a voice? And it wasn't until recently that probably about 3 years ago, that I really started to hear the voices. And it's not a voice. It's sometimes things happen to you and you see it and you're like, wow, that's
yes,
God
a miracle.
speaking
Yes,
to me.
it is. Oh,
That
you get
is God's
signs.
a sign.
Yes,
It's a
you get
sign.
signs. Yes.
And I started, and I think I never saw it before, although I prayed a lot as a child, and having faith as a child was so important to me, because those prayers were a form of therapy for me. The prayers that I used to spend every night praying to God to like keep my family alive and keep my parents alive. And I was so afraid of losing my parents and becoming an orphan. Like, that was one of my biggest fears. And my second biggest fear was losing my limbs. I don't know why. When I was 5 years old, I was like, I don't want to lose my arms. I don't want to lose my legs. And, you know, like, please don't hit me with a bomb. And that was always my biggest fear. But having faith in God was me going through therapy as a child. Like, that was my form of therapy. I've never saw a therapist. I've never talked about anything. And I was telling you earlier. So that to me, the prayers were a form of therapy. So I think even to this day, like, faith for me has been huge. I mean, there's so many nights where I just, you know, go to bed and there's something that's bothering me. And at this point I go, okay, God, it's in your hands.
Yes. Yes.
And to me, that is a relief.
Yeah.
Like, that is
completely letting
it go and putting it in his hands. So faith is so important.
Yeah. Faith over fear, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. When the anxiety comes in, then you pray, right? I always say, just just switch it over to praying, right? 100%. Hand it over to God.
Yeah.
And in that way, in whatever way you pray, you know, that I'm with you. I said, whatever you want to call it, whatever, but just believing.
Pray on it. Yeah.
Pray on it,
Pray
right?
on it, yeah.
Instead of spiraling in the fear and your thoughts, because we can definitely do that a lot, you know?
100%.
It's just spiraling. And I catch myself sometimes, you know, like you said, the safety part of yourself, like, oh, I should be worried about all these things. But now I said, oh no, I'm just going to step into it. I've done so much in my last 3 years now where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go for it. But I'm like, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to go for it, you know? And it always works out. And there's always these little signs now. 100%. And that clarity that you feel.
Yeah.
Because I know I felt that. The more I'm clear, the more I can hear God.
Yes.
Clearly hear him. So now I like crave it, you know, that clarity.
It's almost like addicting.
Yes.
Right? It's almost addicting.
Yeah.
And I think when you're going, and I always tell people that, when you're going through life at such a pace where you're not really slowing down and taking things in, where you just get up and you're working and you're picking up the kids and you're coming home and you're doing this and you're doing that, you can't hear God. You can't hear those voices because you're so wrapped up in the next minute, right? That you're not grounded in this minute.
Yes.
And I think for me, I didn't hear, you know, what my purpose was and what I needed to do. It wasn't until I had gone through that, you know, a collapse in my office, and I started to take the time alone and really go deep into my thoughts and meditate and feel that purpose and that fulfillment. It's when things started happening. And it's funny because once it starts to happen, it just comes to you out of nowhere. It just comes to you. Like, you don't even have to make the effort anymore.
Yes.
It just comes to you because you're open to it.
I know.
And I think before I was so closed and my mind was always on the goal and the next thing and what am I going to do next, that I wasn't really living a purposeful life. And I wasn't opening my mind to accepting it. And now that I am, it just happens to me. Things fall in my lap sometimes.
I say that the same thing. I'm like, people are like, oh, do you have a PR? Do you have this?
Right.
No, because it literally just like even how I got connected with 100%. You and other people. And I'm like, no, it just kind of happens. Yeah.
And it's so funny because sometimes my husband will get home and I literally burst out in tears and he's like, what happened? Are you okay? Like, why are you crying? And I go, well, this really good thing just happened today and it just came out of nowhere. And he's like, okay, honey, well, why aren't you happy? I'm like, no, these are tears of joy.
Yes.
And I feel it. I truly feel it because deep down and like really deep down in my core, I'm opening up and I'm open to it and I'm listening and I'm sitting and with myself, I'm sitting in my thoughts and I'm accepting it.
Yeah.
As before I didn't.
It is so exciting. Like I get so excited.
So
Life
exciting.
is so exciting. Right now I feel like I'm so happy.
Exciting.
Right?
And
so
then you
exciting.
look forward to like, you know, I look forward now to waking up in the morning, like what's going to happen today?
Oh, yeah.
And it's just such a change of mindset. I mean, it's just incredible when you get to that point.
And now I want everybody to have that. I really do. I'm like, you should really try this.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know if you have the same experience, but when you, and you know how people say you outgrow tables and you outgrow people. And I think when you get to that point and you realize and you really feel that, is when you start to outgrow people that don't have that. And for me, it got to a point where I look now at people that don't have that, and I almost feel like, not sorry, but I'm like, I want to help them. I want to help you change your life, right? I want to help you attain that, because it's such a good place to be at, right?
Yes.
Mentally and in every way. And so that's really the purpose of everything that I'm doing, is really to like inspire and help and impact. And I think it just gives you such a different fulfillment. And your goal is not anymore about money. It's not anymore about having materialistic things. It's like, how do I change lives, and how do I impact? And
because you're speaking now, right? And your podcast and your book, and that's and I know you have is it called your Awaken program?
Awaken. So I have Awaken coaching program, which basically it's geared towards, you know, women and men, but a lot of them are women that reach out to me and go like, how are you so confident now? How is your life like this? How are you so fit? How are you running a practice? And I really started giving so much advice. I would spend an hour at night just like returning DMs, leaving voice notes and all that stuff. And I realized, I'm like, why don't I actually start a coaching program? Because I've gone through that. I've gone through so much in my life, from childhood to now, to a mom, to being a dentist, to running a practice. And even to this day, I'm still learning. But it was really such a transformation journey that I went through, that I really want people to learn how to get to that point. And so that's where Awaken started. And the reason I called it Awaken is because really for me, it was an awakening. I was living in such a, you know, fight or flight mode and fear, and a rush to just get to the place I want to get to, as opposed to like taking the time and like enjoying the journey. Enjoying.
And you don't want people to hit almost where they get a heart attack. You know, you don't want them to reach that point. Yeah.
And it's too late. And I always say, and you know, like now when I'm talking to people, I say, listen, you have the most, you know, the richest people, the billionaires, the millionaires that are making so much money, and they have the company and they have everything. But deep down inside, probably 90% of them are unhappy. And it's because there's no balance between your personal life and your business life, right? So there has to be, you know, if you're up here in your business and you're down here in your family life and your personal life, it just, this is not going to make you happy. No. And if your business is here and your personal life is here, you're not going to be happy. They both have to be on the same level. Right. So you have to have, you know, you have to be great at what you're doing, and you have to have a thriving business, but you also have to make sure that your home,
you're not going to lose your family over it.
You're not going to lose your family, and you personally, you're happy, and all of that stuff. So I think it just comes in hand. And how do we attain that? How do we get to that point? It's constant work. It's constant growth. It's constant pushing forward. And it's really, it's the ability to like realize what is your purpose, what is your journey, and enjoy that journey and enjoy the road along the way. Life, because you might wake up someday at like 60 or 55 and like have a stroke and a heart attack, and it's all gone for nothing, and you haven't done anything. All that hard work is just gone.
That's so true. I know so many dentists are like, okay, I'm kind of done. They feel stuck. They're like, well, I can't wait. I've got 10 more years till retirement.
Exactly.
I was like, what? You're going to live 10 years? And yes, it is.
It's terrible. Yes. Or sometimes the people that say, I can't wait till I turn 65, retire, and go travel the world. No, because at 65, you might have a heart disease. You might have high blood pressure, diabetes. Like, go enjoy.
Because you've been living unhappy, and that's going to affect you. You're suppressing all these emotions. Exactly. That's going to show up in chronic illness. Exactly. You know, or any other numbing 100%. Issues, right? So
it really is. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to really having gratitude. And really realizing how short life is. Because I think most people don't realize that. Most people think we have forever, we have so much time, and we're here on earth, you know, is unlimited, and our time is unlimited. And it's when you really look at the days and the times and the minutes and the hours that you have, it's very short. It's a very short time.
You probably have that perspective more than anyone because you
sure.
probably live day by day. Oh, I made it another day.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
growing up where the bombs, okay, I made it one more day.
Exactly.
And be grateful for that day.
Exactly. Because I think I've seen how life can be taken away from you and so fast that I have such, I appreciation for life. Like I appreciate that my lungs work. Like when I'm running, I'm always going, thank you, God, for my lungs. Like, thank you for, people are like, why do you run? Oh, your legs hurt. I'm like, thank you, God, for my legs. I was
just hiking this morning. I'm like, thank you that I can do this.
Yeah. I'm thankful that I could do this. And it changes so much too. I mean, I used to go to work and go, oh my God, I have to drill another crown today. And now I go to work and I go, these hands are drilling and changing lives. Like I'm so, how powerful is that? How amazing is that I could do what I do and I could help people and change their lives through their smiles. Yeah,
creating beautiful smiles. Like that shapes somebody's confidence.
And so your mindset changes everything you do. Sometimes your life doesn't change. Like for me, my life hasn't changed. I'm still traveling a lot. I'm still a mom. I'm still a wife. I'm still working a lot. It's really like mindset and the little things that I have changed that have impacted my life. And so, it's all just
it's a beautiful practice.
Positivity.
Yes. And all those, a lot of these things are free, right?
Oh, everything. I always say, sun is free. Outdoors are free. Working out, you don't need to have a membership at the gym. You can, lace up your shoe and go outside, go for hikes, for runs, and all that stuff. I mean, a cup of coffee in the morning, sitting and watching the sunrise is free. The little things, praying is free, meditating is free.
Yeah, sitting in gratitude, and like you said, journaling. Yes.
Yeah, it's, and I think people really associate happiness with so much materialistic things, and I'm not gonna minimize that. I love nice things. I mean, I'm always dressed up, and I'm into brands, and I love having the nice car.
Hey, I love it too.
And I
but there's always, no shame in that.
No
too,
shame
though.
in that. So I don't want to minimize that because obviously I like dressing up, and I'm always overdressed everywhere I go and all that. But
I love that. My grandma was like that too.
Exactly, 100%. But that brings me joy, though. That brings me joy in a way that when I look good and feel good, I do better. I perform better. And so, I don't want people to think, oh, don't go after the big house. So no, go after what you want. Have those big dreams and achieve them. But really enjoy the road along the way and enjoy the journey, because it's at the end of the day, when you get there and you've been miserable all along the way, when you get to that goal, it won't be fulfilling.
Yes,
it's not going to mean anything.
That's so true.
That's really where the joy is. It's just in the journey and the road.
I love that. I love all that. I mean, I feel I relate so much in all your practices, and it's affected my life tremendously as well. I'm living in so much joy. Yeah. So how can people find you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm on Instagram as The Real OC Dentist. My Smile Diaries, also I have Instagram for the Smile Diaries podcast. And my website is Dr. Guitta Harb. So it's the DRGUITTA Harb, HARB.
Okay. And you have your practice in Orange County?
And my practice is in Orange County. It's at Aliso Viejo. And it's Guitta Harb DMD. So they can just look that up and they'll find it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a true honor that you flew all the way out here.
I'm so happy to be here in person.
Same here. And I'll be looking forward to going to Newport.
Yes,
go visit
you got to
there.
come down to Newport. And I'm so happy we connected, and
likewise.
You're such a bright light as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I can't wait to read your book, and I'll share it and put it in the show notes when it comes out.
I appreciate you. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.